Hey, folks, hope you're all doing well and happy Wednesday. So, it's that time of month again where we talk about another one of our favorite bands. And for this month, we are going to tackle Pantera. Now, Pantera, they put out 9 albums, last one being in the year 2000. Um, just a monumental band back in the day, very innovative, and some might argue they created a whole new genre of metal. So, to help me in the endeavor, I have my two partners in crime. Got Mr. Martin Popoff and Mr.
Yeah.
Pete Pardo. How you gentlemen doing?
What's going on? Hi.
Okay.
And I'm looking forward to this, man. This is a band that, man, back in the day, like when I bought my first cassette of Cowboys from Hell, and that just, holy man, like, wow. Yeah, just some amazing, amazing music these guys did back in the day. So that was my first exposure. Martin, what was your first exposure to Pantera?
I don't have much of a story with this one because for some reason, even though I had a lot of indie albums all through the 80s and a lot of metal, I completely whiffed on Pantera. Did not get any Pantera albums until Cowboys from Hell. And I just remember that being absolutely amazing. It reminded me the same way I felt when I heard Kill 'Em All. It just felt like the next step beyond Kill 'Em All in 83.
Yeah.
So I just remember hearing that and thinking, yeah, this is, it's hard to believe, but somebody's, kicking the thrash band's butts at this point, and being even better and even more extreme and even more violent and heavy. So yeah, it was just Cowboys from Hell.
Yeah. What about yourself, Pete?
Pretty much the same. I had never even heard of them. And then I remember seeing like the video on MTV, I think on Headbangers Ball for Cowboys from Hell. And I was like, wow, what is this cool new band, right? And then we all thought they were a brand new band at the time. And then you found out that they had been around for a number of years and had a handful of albums. And and it was like off to the races from there. So I've always dug them ever since then.
Yeah. And we are going to include the 80s records in this. We're going to do the full 9 albums right from the beginning. So, all right. So let's start with Martin. What's your number 9?
All right, I'm going to start with the debut, Metal Magic. I find this, this band was quite professional right out of the gates. They had the whole situation with recording and their dad and all that stuff. So they came from a musical background and they were ready to roll. And, it's a pretty well-recorded album. You got Terry Glaze in there, Rex Rocker on bass. The guys look fairly hair metally, but they're not really. It's got that really ridiculous album cover on it, but no, there's some good stuff on here. The title track is like quite, early thrash. But to me, they sound a little bit like those, all those Mike Varney shrapnel bands, Hawaii, that sort of thing. They're just this general meat and potatoes, poverty metal sort of sounding band, but pretty well recorded and right out of the gate, pretty professional. So had I got this album in 1983, I would have thought it was really, really good for 1983. Sad Lover on there is kind of big, slow stomping groove sort of thing on it. But tell me what you want. Latest Lover, I guess you might hear a little bit of that Kiss influence in there. And almost punky thrashy again with I'll Be All Right on this album as well. But yeah, just a general heavy album, pretty professional for its day, but I'm going to put it in the number 9 slot.
All right. What do you got for number 9, Pete?
The first 4 are tough for me to rank because, Martin said it perfectly. I think if we had known about this band back then, we would have really enjoyed these records. I think this would have fit into everything I was listening to. That's what it's all about, right? I'm going to go with 85's I Am the Night, which, again, like Martin said, they're well produced. It's good meat and potatoes, American metal at the time. You got lots of great guitar work from Dime on this. He even does like a a solo on here, which is really, really cool. He obviously loved Eddie Van Halen. He loved
Yeah.
the guys in Priest. He loved Ace Frehley, right? So he was, up and coming young guitar player and whatnot. But there's some great tracks on here. I mean, Hot and Heavy is really good. Daughters of the Queen, Valhalla. A lot of Priest influence here. I also never really got the glam metal tag. I think, they had the big hair, but none of this music really is all like that, other than some moments on another album where they kind of, you hear some like vocal harmonies and things from like that we heard with Def Leppard at the time. But I think it's a good, solid record. Any of these four could be at the bottom. They're all really good. But I'll stick this one here for now. But I do recommend this. None of these are bad. None at all.
Yeah, yeah. Well, my number 9 is Metal Magic. I mean, what I hear in this record is like the songwriting. You could tell I mean, they're really young, first time in the recording studio, and it does show. I mean, it for a 16-year-old to record an album that good is impressive. I'm not trying to poo on this record at all. I mean, considering the circumstances, their first time recording, their first time songwriting. You could tell there was some moments there that were that did improve greatly over time, especially with their songwriting, then the recording, shoestring budget and all that, but yeah, I mean, I hear a lot of Def Leppard. I hear a lot of Priest in this record, more so than the Kiss thing. I never really got the Kiss thing, to be honest with you. Um, but what's interesting is, even though they were young kids and they're putting out a record, they already thinking, getting on the radio. They got their radio song on here. They got their ballad on here. The power ballad being, biggest part of me, and then their radio should have been maybe on the radio, hoping to be on the radio with nothing on but the radio, that track. It's a pretty good record. Like you say, if I heard it when it came out back in the day, I'd probably have a little more, I'm looking at it with 2023, vision, so to speak, hindsight. And, but what, for young guys in the studio, man, and I will say this, like Dime from 16 years old was already incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy he's the best part of this record is Dime's playing, even at that young age, like just absolutely fantastic. So
What do you guys think of Terry's vocals? Just
ooh. I'm just gonna mention him a little bit later.
All right.
There's
Yeah,
one
I don't
album
like it.
one album in particular that like it's annoying. And that's the next one I'm going to talk about. But the other ones, he's not so bad. The other two, there's just one in particular, kind of just, I don't know, kind of gets to me a little bit. But
He kind of doesn't really have his own identity, but I don't think he really sounds all that much different or worse than so many other metal singers of that era, So
The band
Yeah.
doesn't
Okay.
have an identity. That's the thing, right? The band really
Yeah.
doesn't
Yeah.
evolve. Yeah.
It's very, like I said, I mean, they followed the formula. Like, let's do our power ballad, let's do, our radio song. It's the cliche of the times, because everybody was doing that, right? So,
Mhm. Yeah.
all righty, what do we got for number 8, Martin?
Okay, so number 8, I went with the third album, I Am the Night, August 16th, 1985. I think at this point you're hearing, first of all, the production of this one is maybe even the worst out of all of them. It's kind of got a really wet, puffy, kind of reverby sort of sound, even though it's still a good production. But I think what you're hearing a lot of here is in Dime, you're hearing the Van Halen inspiration more than influence, but you're definitely hearing High and Dry Def Leppard into Pyromania Def Leppard as well.
Yeah.
You've got the name solo that Pete mentioned, DGTTM, and I Am the Night is very Van Halen sort of speed metal sort of thing. To me, this sounds like, this is the era of, who do we got? Obsession and Warlord and Armored Saint and Hallows Eve and Lizzie Borden and Thrust and Witch Killer, like all these.
Lead Lord and
Yeah, all these bands that are just kind of like, they're just like not as good as Metal Church, but they've got the whole makeup of all of the things that Metal Church wants to do, right? So it's I keep bringing up that term poverty metal because I remember we used to call it that. But all these like mid-label Metal Blade Shrapnel sort of bands, not great recordings, playing pretty loose, but trying to play pretty complicated stuff. Pantera fits right in there with all of that. And again, with the lacking the identity, you just get them ticking off all the different kinds of heavy metal boxes
Yeah.
throughout these records. Very competent at what they do. They've obviously got an amazing guitarist, but it's just like a little bit of this, a little bit of that, all over the place. Pretty professional. So yeah, that's my number 8.
Cool. All right, Pete. What do you got for 8?
Metal Magic, the debut.
Yeah.
For a lot of the reasons you guys already said. I like it. I think it's fun. Can we just say it right now that these album covers on these early albums are fucking awful?
Yeah.
These are just terrible shoestring budget, 8th grade stuff here. It's just terrible. And the song titles are ridiculous. Ride My Rocket, Rock It Out. Yeah. But, the guitar playing is incredible.
Yes.
For such a young band, though, they sound very, very professional, I think. And you got to give them props for that. So, again, I have to reiterate it again. If I had seen this anywhere and heard it back in the early mid 80s, I would have been all over this. And then it would have been really interesting to see their kind of evolution into what they became, Cowboys from Hell. I think it would have been really interesting to be a fan already and then to hear that, because it's so drastically different. But this early stuff is very solid, very enjoyable. So yeah, that's my number 8.
Yeah. Well, my number 8 is I Am the Night. You're asking about Terry Glaze. Yeah, his singing on this is the worst part about this. It kind of sucks the life for me out of some of the songs. It's that, I don't know. It's just that a little bit annoying at times. But the big thing I noticed with this, even from the first record, which was 2 years before, I found the songwriting improvement was just like they sounded like a Pro Caliber band. The first record and the songwriting, I they weren't quite there yet, but with this record, I find the songs just they were on par with all the stuff that was coming out in that in the day. Some really good tracks on here. Onward We Rock. That's, a total accept vibe on that one. You guys mentioned the GTTTM. What gets me is there's all this background like noise and stuff. Like, I wish it was just him playing, because that's Daryl's eruption, and it's got all this other extraneous noise behind it. Daughters of the Queen is really good. Down Below is up tempo and cool. Really good songs here. And yeah, I hear a lot of Rat, Def Leppard, Accept. Yeah, just well done, well played album, and on par with anything that was out at that time for sure. So, I Am the Night is my number 8. Alrighty, number 7.
Okay, well, number 7, I'm going with the 4th album, The First with Phil, Power Metal, May 20th, 1988. I think Phil actually sounds pretty. There you go. I think he sounds actually more annoying than Terry in this incarnation of Phil. He sounds like Dan Beeler from Exciter, with the kind of yelping yells and stuff like that. But there's some good songs on here. Yeah, and you know what? You look at the pictures of them and you play this album, and it is not in any way a bridge album to Cowboys from Hell. It literally sounds like the other ones, even though Phil's in there. And you think, oh, Phil, this great sort of force of nature. Oh, he's going to transform the band. The band is not transformed. They're kind of the same sort of band. I think there's a song in there called We'll Meet Again, which is a really cool sort of almost Thin Lizzy-esque, Van Halen-esque proggy ballad sort of thing. It's got some really neat melody in it. So you hear some really smart songwriting, although it's nothing like what's going to come. Power metal, kind of good riff, but again, Phil's sort of annoying on that. Over and Out, 4 on the Floor sort of sound on that one. Down Below, punky, frantic sort of sound on that one. Proud to Be Loud, again, you get that Accept thing with that one. And yeah, silly sort of a lyrics and title. So, all the way up to the 4th album, maybe they're not really progressing very much. Maybe they should have been better than this by the 4th album. So at this point, the compliments are kind of going away, for them. But fortunately, things change. So there you go, number 7, Power Metal.
Okay, what's your number 7, Pete?
My number 7 is Pyromania. Oh, Projects in the Jungle.
Yeah.
Obviously they were listening to Def Leppard at the time, because there's all sorts of early Def Leppardisms on this album. Not necessarily it's not a bad thing. I don't find this album quite as heavy as the other three, but I think the songwriting's pretty good. Songs are catchy. I think they're trying to figure it out, but but again, you got songs like Heavy Metal Rules, ridiculous title, but fun song. All Over Tonight, Now for Blood are both really good. Dime's guitar work, if you listen to, Martin mentioned before how they're not really progressing as a band, but if you listen to Dime, he's really the only one on these albums who, album after album after album, you're like, wow, this guy is getting all the more special with each release, and then fully realized on Cowboys from Hell with a really good producer, obviously. But there's a little look at the guys right there. So yeah, still kind of floundering, but still putting out some good stuff. Maybe this one's a little more commercial sounding than some of the other ones, or maybe it's just they're writing better hooks. I don't know, but it's a fairly fun album with another awful album cover, and the logo. It's like, there's like no consistency here whatsoever. But yeah, not a bad album.
Yeah, well, that's also my number 7.
There you see that album cover in its full blown up glory.
Yeah.
Woo!
Woo!
Nice.
Martin, I think you should have called them. Your artwork isn't leaving better than whoever did that. Wow.
Except I used to draw a lot like that too.
Better.
Yeah. I mean, of the pre-fill records, I think this one is the best. It's got some pretty decent tunes on this. I really dig All Over Tonight. Blue Light Turning Red, that's another Dimebag eruption on there. In Over My Head, that would be their radio hit. They're trying to get on the radio with that. Heavy Metal Rules, I think is cool. I think it's a good anthem. It's cool that they followed the formula in the early days, right? Which every record had sort of the poppy song, and every record had a pop or a power ballad on it, and then you got Taking My Life and Heartbeat Away, because, even metal fans get sad, So great songs from Dime. I'll tell you one thing. I think I actually prefer his guitar solos on his 80s on this stuff than the solos that he post Cowboys from Hell, because to me they sound more melodic. They're more thought out. They're more featured. All the Pantera stuff. It's sort of like, I mean, I'm wearing the Ace Frehley shirt. It's the Ace Frehley effect, right? You're listening to the Kiss song and you're just waiting for that solo, and because that solo is going to be the highlight of the song. And when I'm listening to this, the 80s stuff, that I feel exactly the same way. It's like, oh, here it comes, and he just blows you away. I love his playing on these 80s albums. It's fantastic.
I think, for me anyway, on the later albums, he seemed more concentrate on crafting incredible riffs than on the early albums. So maybe he was trying, again, this is the 80s, right? All these young guys are trying to wow everybody with their soloing and whatnot. So you have to wonder if maybe at the time that was a little more important to him. And then when he felt he was already reached the level, he's like, all right, I'm going to create some of the coolest riffs in metal for the next decade. And really, that's what he did, right, throughout the 90s. I mean, don't get me wrong. To me, there's a lot of great solos on the later album, but I listen for the riffs on the 90s albums. That's what I listen to, and that's what I really love the most. Solos are great, but I prefer the riffs. It's just me.
He's got some good solos in the later stuff, but it's almost like he's just trying to be like kind of with the riffs as like too extreme. You know what I mean?
Well, the solos are noisier, right? They're
and so back in the 80s, he's playing well-crafted regular 80s style guitar solo, which he's amazing at, better than pretty much anybody. And by the way, I am wearing the Ace Frehley shirt intentionally because I know Dime was a big fan of Ace. So alrighty, let's go to number 6 with Martin.
Okay. Projects in the Jungle. So Def Leppard, High and Dry on Laughing Gas, basically. Very technical, very cool, very frantic and youthful. I really like this album. So it is my favorite of the first ones. I also like Heavy Metal Rules, which is very Dokken also. mixed in with the Def Leppard. Only a Heartbeat Away is very, very Def Leppard, and a little bit of Ozzy in there. And that name solo, Blue Light Turning Red, we get a bunch of tapping in there. So there's a lot of, again, OTT Van Halen, like heavy Van Halen sort of vibes on this as well. Terry singing pretty high. Like I say, it's very technical. This record, there's more dynamics, I think, on it. Like Fire is also like a mix between Dokken and Def Leppard. So to me, it's the one with the most charm and the most identity out of all of them. And it's surprising that it's the second one of four. But it's always the one I liked more. And I agree with you guys. I find Dime to be just a more melodic player and a more traditional player when it comes to the solos and stuff. And I would take the solos on the old stuff any day over the solos on the new stuff, because I find it noisy, atonal, chaotic, chasing sound. He's just like Eddie Van Halen, right? Eddie Van Halen had that, call it what you want, but he went down the rabbit hole of gear, like Ronnie Montrose went down the rabbit hole of gear. And I feel Dime, when it came time to solo, it's like, I'm gonna play crazy mad scientist here and not be particularly musical, but the guitar guys are gonna love this sound that I came up with, right?
Yeah. Alrighty, number 6, Pete, what do you got?
I'll go with Power Metal from '88. Not Phil's greatest vocal performance ever recorded. You have to wonder, because he's not very good on this. You have to wonder how he got the job after this album, right? And of course, you listen to the next album, it's like, is that the same guy? But kind of cool that the name of the album and a song is titled Power Metal. Were we even using the term power metal at the time? I don't remember. I don't think so. I don't think that really started coming into prominence until at least the early 90s. But this is a cool, kind of like Judas Priest sounding album. That's I consider this they're like Priest album. Some good tracks on here. Rock the World, We'll Meet Again is really fun. I like Hard Ride. Great guitar playing, as we mentioned. Not a great vocal performance, but I like the songs on this one. So that's my favorite of the first four. Not by much, but.
All right. Well, we are in sync. Power Metal. First Phil album. I'm going to disagree a little bit about the singing. I think he's a much better singer. I much prefer his vocals on this than the Terry Glay stuff. But I mean, right from the opening track, this feels heavier, this record, than the rest of them. The title cut, Power Metal, is heavier, and it kind of points to where they were going in the future. Really great tracks on here. Power Metal, as I mentioned, We'll Meet Again, Over and Out, killer groove on that. Down Below, great up-tempo rocker. I mean, it's definitely a level above the other 80s albums for me. It's much heavier, and with Phil and the riffs, they just got heavier, they got faster, and most importantly, you start hearing the beginnings of that groove thing that they became very, very well known for. The seeds were planted. And by the way, that song on there, Burn, with 10 ends, is awesome. That's a great track. I love that track. So really good stuff. For anybody that hasn't spent the time and listened to some of the 80s Pantera, the pre-Cowboy stuff, there is some good stuff here. Really good stuff here. So, yeah. Alrighty. Let's move on. Let's move on to number 5.
Okay, number 5 for me is Reinventing the Steel. So this is the last one they did. I've got it in this spot of these 4 albums because I think at this point it was all about, first of all, it's self-produced and it sounds amazing. And they all those great things learned from Terry Date are in this. Vinnie Paul became an amazing producer, but it's Vinnie and Dime. At this point, I think it's all about kind of what I said about sounds, but it's also all about performance. And as you move through these albums, the songwriting becomes kind of secondary to them, I think. Although there's a lot of really wacky songwriting on basically the last 3, I'd say. There's 1, 2, 3. Yeah, there's 5, I guess, at this point, right? That we have left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. So the last 3 have a similarity to them rather than the first 2. But Yeah, I mean, I love Yesterday Don't Mean Shit on here. Revolution Is My Name. We'll Grind That Axe for a Long Time. I love the mid-pace stuff, the hooky stuff. I love the riffs. But to me, as you get towards the end of the band, where there's a lot of drama and trauma in the band, this is almost getting to, the deepest depths of like the women and children first versions of Van Halen, like the crazy, the Tora Toras and things like that. What else? One Foot Out the Door. I think you're getting to the point where it really is about band chemistry and performance and technology and interesting sounds a little more than the songwriting. So that's why I have it in the bottom slot of all these. But yeah, there you go.
All right. What's your number 5, Pete?
That's my number 5 as well. Martin and I did a show on Pantera a number of years ago, and we both were in agreement that we prefer on the later stuff the more mid-paced, groove-laden stuff. I find that I tend to not shy away, but when they're trying to do the really, really fast stuff, the more kind of hardcore type stuff, I don't really like that stuff as much. I like when they really groove on a really heavy riff, and the mid-pace stuff I think is just terrific. And you have a handful of those on here. I mean, Revolution Is My Name is terrific. Martin and I joked a couple of years ago. They put out a greatest hits set or collection or compilation set after they had broken up. That is just absolutely terrific and has, for me, all of their greatest songs. Yeah. And that is one of the greatest compilations you'll ever see. Martin, what year was that? Like
Far Beyond the Great Southern Cowboys Vulgar Hits. It is 2003.
Yeah. That is a kick-ass set, and it's got some new tracks and covers and things on it. It's really, really good. Anyway, but I digress. I like the production of this album. I think it's nice and heavy, sounds great. The guitar tones are great. I don't think, and again, getting back to that riff thing, what I like to hear from this band, I don't think for me the riffs are as memorable on this album as they are on the other 4 that are to come. And that's why I generally put this one down at the bottom of the later albums, and it's got another just god-awful album cover on it. So, but yeah, the best is yet to come in my ranking, and I think the albums that all come before it. So
yeah, well, we're gonna go for the trifecta, but I got the little better album cover.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No
That's
guy
on the eyes, right? Yep.
No guy in a flame. Reinventing the steel. All in all, it's classic sounding Pantera, but without as many catchy riffs and not as many cool moments. They're in here, but only in some songs or parts of songs for me. It doesn't have that consistency. A lot of it is over the top heavy, with Phil sounding very pissed off, singing over the top of it. It's just not musical enough for me at times. But there are tracks that I really dig on this. Yesterday Don't Mean Shit is a great banger of a song. Revolution Is My Name. Once you get past that noisy opening, there's this, a lot of songs, like, they just have it. It's a racket. And then the song starts. I mean, why? Just, I don't know. Is that supposed to make it heavier? I don't understand. It makes them disappear. Sludgy and cool track. The rest of it has some moments where I like part of a song, or it just gets ridiculous for me. I'll Cast a Shadow. I should mention that has some great moments too. It's a decent album, but there's better stuff in the next 4. There's sort of, I'm going to call it my metal threshold. I have a metal threshold, right? Where I can get into the heavy stuff, but then it gets to a point where it goes beyond that, and it just starts sounding like a bunch of racket. And Pantera is about as heavy as I can get. They're like literally on the line of my metal threshold, and sometimes they go a little beyond it. In this album, in spots where, what, man, it's just a bunch of noise. But within a song, they'll go above the threshold, and then they'll come down, and then they'll play. Oh, wait a minute, now I can get into that bit. They tend to do that. I don't know if it's everybody has a different metal threshold. Maybe you guys have a higher metal, because I know, Pete, you listen to a lot of stuff that I could never listen to. Right? Like I don't, you know what
I
I
was
mean?
going to say,
Everybody
for
has
those
their.
of you waiting to see if the three of us will do a Cannibal Corpse ranking, that's not happening.
Pete like
Not gonna
Chicago. That's about as bad as it gets.
Yeah. So you know what I mean. So everybody has a different metal threshold. So I'm just letting people know that these guys are like literally right there on the line, right?
Yeah.
So and that so there's a lot of this that kind of goes a little beyond what I can tolerate, I guess. But yeah, there you go. All right, what do we got for number 4?
Well, yeah. Speaking of that threshold, I mean, I agree with everything you guys say, and Pete, with the fast stuff as well. But the other part of that racket is when it's the smoking pot music, right? Or the drunken jam music, where it's a bunch of noise, or where Phil's doing his his little talking thing that he does, right?
Yeah.
Over like a mellow bass loping groove and stuff. So there's a lot of racket that's not even all that heavy that they do too. They just do this weird jammy stuff, right? Anyways, I've got Great Southern Trendkill next. So here that's a great album cover.
Yeah.
Not crazy
Yeah, that
about the
one works.
title. I think the title's kind of weird because Trendkill is not one word. So I don't know what that thing is. But basically this is a direct evolution from Far Beyond Driven to Reinventing, I think. War Nerve is really cool on this with that reverse Sabbathy kind of thing coming in, that echo. Living Through Me, Hell's Wrath is amazing. Drag the Waters is kind of the walk on this one. Went platinum. This is May 7th, 1996. So yeah, right in Metal's Nadir, Pantera is just like walking through here, just killing everybody with the coolest albums, in metal. Basically, they're basically the coolest band right through this entire decade, right? Metallica's not cool. Metallica's got big trouble right around this time. Like they're the least cool thing going, right? And here's Pantera just laying it down with these amazingly produced, really cool records. But yeah, a lot of noise on here. Suicide Note Part 1, mellow. Suicide Note Part 2, thrashy. And those thrash things that they do, they often use them as just parts to show, look how heavy we are, but they're going to be over quick, right? So they do that a lot with those things as well. But yeah, it's just kind of they can be a little all over the place. So this one is, like I say, direct revolution. So it's just like that little bit more musical than Reinventing the Steel.
Yeah. More on that later. All right, number 4, Pete. What do you got?
Martin and I are on point again. Great Southern Trendkill. Great album cover. I agree. And I hate snakes, but it's a great album cover. Drag the Waters is so good. That is just groovalicious heavy metal right there. Suicide Note, the 2-parter there, that's excellent. Floods, talk about guitar solos. Many people cite Floods as arguably his greatest guitar solo of all time. I don't know if I would say it's his greatest, but it's definitely up there. War Nerds is terrific. I love the sound of this album. It's nice and heavy. Most of the stuff is pretty damn memorable. I mean, the reason it's not higher for me is because the other 3 I think that's prime Pantera, but this is right up there. So that's my number 4.
Wow. We are again in sync. Okay. I understand at this point they were not getting along. So maybe this is one of the reasons why. Again, there's great moments on here, but there's those over the top moments where again it passes my mental threshold into just a bunch of racket, like the title cut. I mean, and Suicide Part 2. But that being said, I love Tens on this. I think that's a great song. Drag the Waters is awesome. Living Through Me, Hell's Wrath, and Floods is great. And you mentioned the solo in Floods. It's fantastic. This is a really mixed bag for me here. But it's got enough good moments that, it's number 4. So it's a good record. But again, it's that those moments where they kind of go a little too extreme for what I can handle. So, but there you go. That's my number 4. Alrighty. Okay, we're down to the top 3.
Number 3, I'm going with Cowboys from Hell, because to me this feels like the first album, and it is the first of this completely new band. I find the playing is a little pinched, a little tight, like the concept. Everybody's so excited about the concept, but I think the performance is just a little bit stiff on it. I think there's a little bit of a vestiges of Phil coming from the power metal album still on this, so he's not quite fully cooked yet either. The songs are amazing. I almost feel like if these songs would have been allowed to sit around and the Vulgar Band did these songs, they would have breathed a little more and they would have had a little more heft to them. But I mean, you think of Cowboys from Hell and that amazing, amazing intro to that. That is just one of those magic moments, the boardroom moments, as I call them, right? Where it would just been amazing to see people's reaction to that. Like, what an incredible, catchy, new metal sort of thing. They're such a cool band at this point. Like, they're just out cooling everybody. Anthrax, any of the big four, Metallica, Slayer, whatever. There's just everybody's heads are turning, when they hear that song. Same with Primal Concrete Sledge. So cool. That triple pattern against the sort of 4/4 pattern on that. Never been a big Cemetery Gates fan. Domination is really cool. They do such a great job with spaces, such an innovative production job on here. Although we always have to give And Justice for All credit, I think, for some of what we're hearing out of the Terry Date sound in this. So yeah, it's just a bunch of really good, excellent, well-written, catchy, this version of Pantera 2.0 songs. But I just find it's just a little bit too they're just too new at this point to make the album that's as good as my other two on my list. So there you go, number 3.
All right, what's your number 3, Pete?
That is it. Yeah, love the production of the album. I think Dime's guitar tone. This is where you listen to this and you listen to the albums that came before, and it's like, this is the guy, right? This is where we know now what he really wanted to do and what he could do. I think the reason why this is number 3, I remember when this first came out, people were all into this. Metal fans are like, this is the great new band on the scene. And I think Cemetery Gates, gave a lot of people an idea of what they thought this band were going to be all about. And then the next 2 albums, like, oh, well, where's the next kind of Cemetery Gates, right? But, the title track is killer. Primal Concrete Sledge is great. Heresy is great. This Art of Shredding is cool. I don't find, though, that this album start to finish is as strong as the other 2, my number 1 and 2. And I don't think there's, other than the title track, I don't think there's anything on this album that I like nearly as much as my favorite songs on the first 2. The first 2 my first 2 have songs that I think are just the greatest things that this band has ever done. I don't think there's anything on this album that really kind of qualifies there. Like, there's not a top 5 song from this band on this album, in my opinion. Maybe the title track, but I still think it's really good. Love the sound of it. Love the guitar playing. I think it's one of their better ones. It's just not their best to me.
Yeah, I just thinking about this. Like, once they got out of from Cowboys from Hell onwards, they stopped checking the boxes of let's put a pop song and a power ballad on each album. That kind of went away. Yeah. Now they're just putting out whatever the hell they want to put out, and being original, right? So, but this is where I'm going to break away from you guys. I'm going Vulgar Display of Power for my number 3. They're hitting on all cylinders here. Great, great songs, great riffs. One of their best, top to bottom. Some of the tracks that I really dig. A New Level. The band is so. I mean, there's certain songs where it really shows like the tightness of the band, and that one is one of them. Of course, Walk. Of course, man, it's one of those just big dumb Godzilla bash your head against the concrete riffs that are, I love those types of songs. Live in a Hole, a little different, sounding but cool. Regular People, Conceit, awesome. A little funky, a little percussive, guitar on that. Hollow's a nice melodic song. You can finally hear Phil sing, and then there's that heavy change up at the back end of it. That's great. There's some really great groove moments on this record, but man, I like the songs on the other 2 better. So these 3 are kind of just a matter of where do the songs fall, on which album. So of my final 3, the other 2 just happen to have the songs that I enjoy the most. So That's my number 3. All righty.
Okay.
Number 2, Martin, what do you got?
Number 2 for me, I'm going with Vulgar. February 25th, 1992, double platinum. Bit front loaded. Mouth for War is a top 5 for me for sure. New Level's amazing. Walk is cool. This Love is amazing for, it's mellow to heavy dynamics on here as well. But By Demons Be Driven, kind of slow, bluesy, sludgy thing. That thing that I'm not crazy about them doing. Hollow, kind of clean singing in there. So there's only 11 tracks on it. But I think they're hitting their still like the production never gets particularly way better than this, but I think this is still conservative versus the last 3 in terms of the production. There's less sort of texture to it, but it's not as simplistic and completely hit you over the head as Cowboys is. But there's bass on this one. There's more bass than there is on Cowboys. But yeah, I think this might be the one where most people would argue that's the height of their songwriting power. So yeah, it's an incredible album. I've got it at number 2, but I just feel like my number 1 choice brings some other elements in that I'm going to go with. So yeah, it's an evolution. I basically consider this their Ride the Lightning versus the Kill 'Em All of the band. So there you go, number 2.
Okay, what's your number 2, Pete?
Wow. I love By Demons Be Driven. One of my favorite songs by these guys. Oh, it's so good. There's some stuff on this album that we were talking before about how sometimes the fast stuff doesn't really work for us. But I think like Mouth for War is a perfect example of a really fast-paced song that they do really well. A New Level is terrific. Walk is one of their most famous songs. I don't really ever need to hear it again, but it's still a great song. Fucking Hostile is great. This Love is killer. I love the production of this album. I like Hollow too. That's got some kind of ups and downs in it, which I kind of dig. I don't know. For me, this is a little more consistent album, I think, than Cowboys from Hell, for me anyway. And I think I think the band really embraced that little kind of extreme nature of their music that it really came out on this album and even more on the next album. Whether you like it or not, that's totally up to the listener. But I think this is a banger of an album. And if it wasn't for my number 1, this would be it. And I think the album cover is pretty cool as well. So number 2.
All righty. Well, here's my number 2. Far Beyond Driven, 1994. I love most of this record, but there are, again, some of those over the top moments like Strength Beyond Strength. That's a little bit too much, though. There is a nice breakdown in that song. If you hang with it long enough, it turns into something decent at that point. I like that. Use My Third Arm. To me, that's a little bit too much as well. Again, I'm exceeding my metal threshold. But that being said, there's some really, really great songs on this. Some of my favorites. 5 Minutes Alone is absolutely killer. Love that song. I'm Broken. Devastating, man. It's just a devastating tune. Shedding Skin is great. Got some light and shade there. Very well done. Throes of Rejection. Again, super tight playing on that. The one thing with this record, I think that would make it a little better is I think it's a little bit too long. They should have cut maybe 2-3 tracks off of this, made it a nice tighter package, because there are some songs in there that I don't think are of the quality, match the quality of the other stuff that they could have, maybe not included. And it would have made it a much better record, a much tighter package. But, on the strength of the songs that I mentioned, 5 Minutes Alone, I'm Broken, Shedding Skin, those are just like some of my favorite Pantera songs, and they all happen to be on this record. So that's why it's at my number 2. All righty.
All right.
We're at the top.
Yeah, my number 1 is Far Beyond Driven. Love that album cover. What a great album cover. And the fact that it came with a blue, you probably can't see that, but it's actually a blue jewel case where there's black, right?
I know.
But yeah, this was when Pantera was absolutely the it band, right? This is when they could do no wrong. Is yours black?
No, mine's black.
Yeah. No, I don't know.
I gotta dig mine out. I gotta look at that
matching
now.
matching blue up there. But yeah, this is when they were absolutely at the height of their powers. I saw them at Maple Leaf Gardens, which is the heaviest band I'm sure that ever played there. Kind of by default. I mean, there have been heavier bands now, but now we've got the Air Canada Center. But yeah, so that was an incredible show. They were absolutely going nuts. So this one, I think you've got this might even be the most extreme they ever got in certain ways. But still, the songwriting's good. But it has some of the, put it this way, I think it's got some of the craziest, most drugged out moments that they ever did. So I think there's less of that on the last two. But it also has some of the most amazing songwriting. Definitely Becoming, 5 Minutes Alone, I'm Broken. Again, kind of front loaded these Pantera albums, right?
Right.
Good Friends and a
Yeah.
Bottle of Pills is not so great. That's one of these jammy crap,
Yeah.
crappy sort of druggy songs. But yeah, Use My Third Arm, I really like that one. I mean, it's fast, but the beat itself isn't that fast. It's a wall of sound though, right? But it's cool as well. Even Strength Without Strength has got a mix up of what it's doing in there, so that's pretty cool too. So it's almost like this one in Vulgar, it's like the A&R type hat on. You would pick Vulgar for the songs, but this one you almost want to pick because it seems like they're being even more creative. It's more white knuckle. They're more on the edge of what it means to be Pantera. You can tell things are about to unravel. So it's a right at the frantic, sleepless, drugged and drunken height of their power, when everybody loved them to death, sort of thing. So yeah, I think it's just all told, all around, it's the most it's just got most of the Pantera strengths on it, sort of thing. So that's my number one.
Okay. Geez, I wonder what Pete's number one is.
I mean, they're basically carrying the torch of metal at this point, right? I mean, yeah. I mean, this album is my favorite album of Dime's in general. I think his guitar playing is off the charts great on here. And I will say, Becoming, 5 Minutes Alone, and I'm Broken, to me, are the three greatest back-to-back songs in their entire catalog. And I could dislike the whole rest of the album. I would still rank this number one for those three songs, because I think the riffs and the grooves on those three songs are absolutely off the charts immense. And there's a lot of other really good stuff on here too. I even think I'm not a huge Planet Caravan fan, even though I love Black Sabbath to death. It's pretty fun. Did it need to be on here? Nah, not really. But Shed and Skin is great. Use My Third Arm. I mean, I really like this album a lot. Their most extreme album, yes, I will agree with Martin. 100%. I remember when this album first came out, I was kind of like, oh, because I really wasn't listening to, I listened to like Death and some early, Possessed and some early extreme metal bands, but I didn't really like start to get into like black and death metal till the early 2000s. So, for 1994 or whatever, this is pretty extreme as far as like popular metal, right? There's stuff on the underground, obviously, that's way heavier than this, but for like a mainstream band, this was pretty extreme at the time. I think it's a terrific album, and like I said, love the riffs and the soloing on this. This is a dime bag album for sure.
Nice.
Well, my number one is
Cowboys.
Yeah, it's the yacht rock version of Pantera that I can handle. But yeah, I mean, this record for me is that this is their masterpiece. I mean, top to bottom, it's the most consistent record. Right from the opening track. I mean, come on, catchy riff and tons of groove. Psycho Holidays, Relentless, Hearsay, love hearing the tightness of the band. To me, that song sounds a lot like it came from Kill 'Em All era Metallica. Cemetery Gates, I do like Cemetery Gates, and it's nice to hear Paul. Nice to hear Phil actually sing. Domination, holy shit, absolutely killer. The solo smokes, it's totally Eddie, and then you got that absolutely crushing breakdown where it's just gong, 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 gong. Oh my god, you just want to bash your head off a concrete wall. I mean, it's amazing. Clash with Reality, just great. Message in Blood, it's so cool. I mean, there's just so many really, really good songs on here. it's for me, it's their most consistent record. I guess it's the most easy listening of the Pantera records. Maybe that's why I like it the best. But I just love the tracks on this record. I mean, that cassette that I bought, that first cassette, is still my favorite. I was gonna say Metallica, still my favorite Pantera. Yeah, great record. And
It's a good
this,
point, Hack. I mean, it almost seems like percentage wise, it's the album where they cared the most about songwriting. And like I
yeah,
said before, I mean, that thought just came to me when I said it. But I mean, I almost feel like you could take that bank of songs, move it over to the Vulgar band, and you would actually have an even better album than Vulgar. But it needs to be executed by the band 3 years in or 2 years into this new reality of what they're like.
yeah, yeah,
I think they were still interested in being melodic at that point. I think melody was not as important to them after that album, which, for some people that's fine, no big deal. But that, to me, that's
yeah,
the big difference between Cowboys from Hell and Vulgar Display of Power. All of a sudden, all those more melodic moments. Not that there aren't some on Vulgar. I mean, on the other album, not really. But I think Cowboys is definitely the most melodic of all of the latter stuff.
yeah. It seemed like they just want to get more and more extreme and more metal. And again, not to belabor the point, but at this, for me, it gets to a point where it starts to become non-musical, and then that's sort of like, it's where it
It's
kind of
not
draw the
even
line.
just more metal, it's more dissonant, right?
Well, yeah, dissonant, yeah, or whatever their interpretation of more extreme is. Maybe it is dissonant. I don't know, but yeah, there you go.
Hack, have you ever
Oh.
listened to Phil's other band, Down?
No, no, I haven't.
I would highly recommend you check out their first album.
Okay,
Yeah, it's really good. Do you like? I mean, he's got guys from Crowbar and Corrosion of Conformity in the band, and Rex is in the
okay,
band. I think if you like if you listen to any Corrosion of Conformity, especially their latter stuff, I think you'd probably like that. It's very Black Sabbathy, stoner,
yeah.
heavy doomy stuff. Really,
Well,
really
that's
good.
one thing. I that's one thing I didn't mention, but in what they sounded like. But later on, I hear a lot of Sabbath and what they do is like that slow, sort of sludgy, dry, kind of belabored kind of grooves. There's a lot of Sabbath in what they do on the slower stuff for sure, and kind of that sort of Iomi, not quite dissonance, but that kind of evil, sort of weird tonality on some of the riffs. Like he's got quite a bit of that in the later stuff, I find too, which is very cool. It's very cool. Alrighty, so Martin, what do you got coming up, books wise, show wise? Anything you want to mention?
Well, I've got the audio podcast every week. That's History in 5 Songs with Martin Popoff. We got our video channel, The Contrarians. Every week there's an album cover show that's Wednesday at 7 live. And my latest 2 books are the Blue Oyster Cult panel book, Dominance and Submission, the Blue Oyster Cult Canon, and the Big Who Quadrophenia 50th anniversary book. So that's new. And I've got a Kiss book out in a couple of weeks. Kiss at 50.
Kiss.
It's a coffee table book. Yeah.
Oh boy. All right, what about yourself, Pete? What's going on?
Well, what time is it? In about 8 minutes, we have a show coming on. We've already taped it, so no, I don't have to jump off this to another show. We've got another episode of a monthly show that I do with Phil Aston from the UK. He runs the Now Spinning Magazine YouTube channel, and he and I do this monthly show called Songs That Define a Guitarist. In each episode, we pick 10 guitar players, and we pick one song for each guitar player. We each pick one song that we feel best exemplifies and defines what that guitar player is all about. So it's coming up in just 8 minutes. So for those of you watching, want to hop on over to see Tranquility. We've got 10 guitar players, some metal players, some rock players, a whole bunch of really cool ones picked out. And somehow we're going to pick a song each for each one of them that we best feel gives you the essence of that guitar player. So that's coming up in a little bit. Just a few minutes, and then Martin and I are doing another one of our Friday shows Friday morning. So hop on over and check us out on Friday morning.
Yeah, I watched the first episode you did with Phil. That was really good. That was interesting. Yeah, it's a great premise too. Really good premise.
Concept, yeah.
So, folks, if you want to help support the channel, the links are below. If you're new to the channel, consider liking and subscribing. Also, check out, I got playlists. I got all kinds of original music. that's I got check that out as well. And I've got we've 2-3 years of album ranking shows with these gentlemen and other things. So there's lots of stuff to check out. So that would all be much appreciated. I want to thank everybody for watching. I want to thank these gentlemen once again. Once a month we do this. We will be doing it again next month around the same time. And hang on, guys, and we will see you all. And have a great rest of your week. By the way, I'll see you next month. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.